Welcome to Reddit's For Sleep, where every story is your escape into calm. If this video helps you relax or drift off tonight, gently tap that like button so we can keep making more just like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe and let us tuck you in with a fresh hour of stories every single night. Story 1. My husband's family wanted me gone, so I gave them exactly what they asked for. I never imagined that when I married David, I'd also be marrying into a family that treated me like I was an uninvited guest at my own wedding. David and I met in college. He was the kind of guy who'd hold the door open for strangers, pick up trash on the sidewalk, and bring me coffee without asking because he had a feeling I needed it. I loved him for that. Still do. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. But from the very first time I met his family at Thanksgiving, I knew there was trouble. His mother, Linda, gave me this look, the one where her eyes scan you up and down like she's inspecting a used car. His older sister, Claire, was polite but distant. Her smile, so tight it could have cracked glass. And his father, well, Mr. Reynolds barely acknowledged me. I chalked it up to them needing time to warm up to me. I thought, they don't know me yet. That'll change. I was wrong. The first blow came during our engagement dinner at their house. Linda waited until David went to the bathroom before leaning across the table to whisper, "You don't seem like the type of girl David usually dates. I'm surprised he proposed." I was too stunned to reply. Claire smirked at her wine glass like she'd just heard the punchline of a joke. When David returned, the conversation shifted to vacation homes and golf tournaments. I sat there, silent, feeling like a ghost. After we got married, the little jabs became more frequent. At Christmas, Linda handed out presents to everyone, silk scarves for Claire, cufflinks for David, even a book on sailing for Mr. Reynolds. When it came to me, she handed me a gift card. For Target, she said, "You seem like you'd appreciate something practical." Claire and her husband laughed under their breath. David didn't notice. He was busy thanking his mom for the cufflinks. I didn't say anything. I told myself not to make waves. 6 months later, David and I bought our first house, a modest 2-bedroom in the suburbs of Portland. We invited his family over for dinner. Linda walked in, looked around, and said, "Well, it's cozy. Not exactly what I pictured for David, but I suppose it'll do." Claire added, "I can't believe you didn't wait until you could afford something bigger. I mean, this is fine for now." David rubbed my shoulder and whispered, "Ignore them." But how could I? The final straw came last summer. David and I had been trying for a baby. After months of negative tests, I finally got 2 pink lines. We were over the moon. We decided to announce the pregnancy at Linda's birthday dinner. As soon as we shared the news, Linda's face fell. "Oh," she said flatly. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order." Claire chimed in. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Babies are expensive. And, you guys aren't exactly swimming in money." Even David looked hurt by that. But it got worse. Later, while David and his dad were in the garage, Linda pulled me aside. She said softly, "there's still time to reconsider. A baby is a big responsibility. Maybe David would have been better off with someone more stable." Something inside me broke. For years, I'd tried to win these people over. I baked them cookies, sent Christmas cards, smiled through their insults. But in that moment, I realized they didn't want me in their family. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to be part of theirs either. So I came up with a plan. I started pulling back. No more Sunday dinners, no more polite phone calls to Linda. When they invited us to a weekend at the lake, I claimed I wasn't feeling well. I encouraged David to go without me. You should spend time with your family, I told him. I'll be fine. At first, he resisted, but eventually he went. When he returned, he seemed subdued. They didn't even ask about you, he said one night. It's like you don't exist to them. I shrugged. Maybe that's for the best. Then I started saving every spare penny from my job. By the time our daughter Lily was born, I had enough stashed away for a small apartment in a neighboring town. David didn't know about it. Not yet. 2 weeks after Lily's birth, Linda insisted on visiting. I agreed, but only because David wanted her there. She came in, looked at Lily in her bassinet, and said, "She's, cute. I hope she doesn't have your nose." That night, as I sat in the nursery rocking Lily to sleep, I made my decision. I wasn't going to raise my daughter around these people. The next morning, I packed my things. When David came home from running errands, I handed him a letter. It explained everything, how I felt suffocated by his family, how I needed space to raise Lily in peace, how I wasn't leaving him, but I was leaving his family. If you want to be with us, I wrote, you're welcome. But if you can't cut the cord with your parents, then this is where our paths diverge. It's been 6 months. David chose us. He cut off his family, blocked their numbers, changed his email. It hasn't been easy. He cries sometimes. I know he misses them. But last night, as we watched Lily take her first steps, he looked at me and said, This is all I need. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Story 2. The day my boss's nephew learned what real consequences feel like. I've always been the type of person who believes in following the rules. I show up on time. I finish my work before deadlines. I treat everyone from the janitor to the CEO with the same level of respect. So when my boss hired his nephew Travis, straight out of college, I thought, hey, give the kid a chance. Big mistake. Travis strutted into the office on his first day like he owned the place. He had that smug, self-satisfied grin of someone who'd never worked a real day in his life. His hair was gelled into a perfect wave, his shirt was unbuttoned just a little too far, and his watch probably cost more than my car. Hey, old-timer, he said when he saw me. You're the guy I'll be shadowing, right? I ignored the old-timer comment. At 42, I wasn't ancient. Yes, I said calmly. I'll show you the ropes. Travis smirked. Cool. Just don't expect me to be your coffee-fetching intern or anything. I've got bigger plans. That should have been my first clue. Over the next few weeks, Travis proved himself to be a nightmare. He showed up late, sometimes 2 hours late, with no apology. He spent most of his time scrolling through Instagram, occasionally leaning over to show me photos of girls in bikinis. Check her out, he'd say. I think she likes me. Should I DM her? Meanwhile, I was picking up the slack. When I gently suggested that he might want to focus on his work, he rolled his eyes. Relax, man, he said. My uncle's the boss. He knows I've got talent. Granted. The only thing Travis was talented at was avoiding responsibility. Then came the day that nearly broke me. Our company had landed a major client, a high-end restaurant chain looking to rebrand. It was my job to put together the marketing pitch. My boss, Mr. Jennings, decided that Travis should help me. Let the kid take the lead, he said. It'll be good experience for him. I wanted to protest, but I held my tongue. For 3 days straight, I stayed late crafting a detailed presentation. Travis. He showed up for maybe an hour each day, then disappeared for lunch meetings that lasted the rest of the afternoon. The night before the big pitch, I emailed him the slides and asked him to look them over. Sure thing, boss, he replied. I'll give it a once-over tonight. I should have known better. The next morning, we walked into the conference room. The restaurant executives were there, dressed in sharp suits, waiting expectantly. Mr. Jennings introduced Travis as our young rising star. I sat to the side, ready to jump in if needed. Travis swaggered to the front of the room, turned on the projector, and froze. So, this is our idea, he mumbled. We want to make your brand, more modern and stuff. He clicked through the slides without explaining a single one. The clients looked confused. One of them whispered to another. Travis glanced at me, panic in his eyes. "Help me out, man," he muttered. So I stepped in. I explained the vision, the strategy, the projected ROI. I answered their questions with confidence. By the end of the meeting, the clients were nodding, smiling even. But I noticed the way Mr. Jennings's jaw tightened as he glanced at his nephew. After the meeting, Mr. Jennings pulled me aside. "Thanks for saving that," he said gruffly. "I'll talk to Travis." But the talk never happened. If anything, Travis got worse. The final straw came 2 weeks later. We had a critical deadline for another client. Travis was supposed to deliver the final draft of a campaign slogan. Instead, he emailed me at 11 p.m. the night before the deadline. "Yo, had a crazy night. Can you just whip something up for me? You're better at this stuff anyway." That was it. No apology, no accountability. I stayed up until 3 a.m. rewriting his work. The next morning, as I trudged into the office, bleary-eyed, Travis strolled in, carrying a Starbucks and bragging about the wild party he'd been at. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't about to let this kid keep skating by while I did his job. It was time for a little malicious compliance. The opportunity came later that week. We were meeting with yet another client. Travis was again taking the lead. This time, when he turned to me for help, I stayed silent. He stammered through his half-baked ideas, his face turning redder by the second. The client looked unimpressed. At one point, Travis actually said, "We could, do something viral, maybe TikTok dances or something? People love that stuff." The client blinked. "I think we'll need some time to consider," they said politely. When the meeting ended, Mr. Jennings stormed into my office. "What happened in there?" he demanded. I kept my voice calm. "I followed your instructions," I said. "I let Travis take the lead." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed. The next day, Travis didn't show up for work. And the day after that. Finally, Mr. Jennings called a staff meeting to announce that Travis has decided to pursue other opportunities. Translation, he was fired. A week later, Mr. Jennings stopped by my desk. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "And a thank you. You were right about Travis. He wasn't ready. He didn't deserve the chances I gave him." I nodded, saying nothing. But inside, I felt lighter than I had in months. It's been a year now. The office runs smoother than ever. And sometimes, when I'm sipping my morning coffee, I think about Travis. I wonder if he ever learned that talent means nothing without effort. Story 3. I found out my wife's secret, and I can't unsee it. I thought we were happy. Emily and I met when we were both 26, two people trying to figure out adulthood. I was fresh out of grad school, working as a junior architect. She was a kindergarten teacher with a smile that made everyone feel instantly at ease. We dated for 3 years, got married in a quiet ceremony on the Oregon coast, and bought a little fixer-upper outside Seattle. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Or at least, I thought it was. It started 6 months ago, when Emily got a new job at a private school across town. At first, I was thrilled for her. The pay was better, the benefits were great, and she seemed genuinely excited. But little things started to change. She stopped bringing home stories about her students. She stayed late at work more often, saying she had parent meetings or lesson planning nights. And then there was her phone. She started keeping it face down on the table. She'd excuse herself to take calls in the other room. When I asked her about it, she laughed. Paranoid much? She teased, ruffling my hair. I'm not hiding anything, Jake. Stop watching so many crime documentaries. I smiled back, but deep down, something didn't feel right. One Friday night, she came home later than usual, close to midnight. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch TV, when I heard her quietly unlock the door. Hey, I said. Long night? She jumped, clutching her bag like I'd startled her. Yeah, she said quickly. Sorry, one of the parents had a situation. I had to stay and help. I nodded slowly. Want me to heat up dinner? She shook her head. No, I'm exhausted. I'm going straight to bed. And just like that, she disappeared down the hallway. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was gnawing at me. At 2 a.m., I got up and walked to the laundry room. Emily's bag was sitting on top of the dryer. I know I shouldn't have done it. I know snooping is wrong. But I unzipped it anyway. Inside was her wallet, her planner, and a small box of condoms. My heart stopped. We hadn't used condoms in years. Emily had been on birth control since before we got married. My hands were shaking as I zipped the bag shut. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. I made us pancakes. We sat at the table, her scrolling through her phone while I stared at my plate. Every time she smiled at a text, my stomach twisted. For 2 weeks, I debated what to do. Should I confront her? Should I follow her? I felt like a character in one of those cheesy detective shows she used to binge. One Tuesday, I left work early, claiming I wasn't feeling well. At 5 p.m., I parked my car a block away from her school and waited. At 5:30, I saw her walk out. She wasn't alone. A man was with her, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored coat. They laughed about something, and then he put his hand on her lower back as they walked to his car. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. I didn't follow them. I couldn't. Instead, I drove home in a daze, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. That night, Emily came home at 9 p.m. Sorry, she said breathlessly. Parent-teacher conferences ran late. I just nodded. She didn't notice the way my voice cracked when I said, "No problem." Over the next few days, I replayed that moment outside the school over and over. The way he touched her, the way she smiled, the way my world crumbled in silence. By Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. "Emily," I said quietly as we sat on the couch. "Can we talk?" She looked up from her book, her brow furrowed. "Sure. What's up?" I took a deep breath. "Are you seeing someone else?" Her eyes widened. "What? No. Why would you even ask that?" I stared at her, trying to read her expression. "Because," I said softly, "I saw you with him, outside the school." Emily's mouth fell open. "Oh my God," she whispered. She started crying. Not the guilty, crocodile tears I expected. Real, guttural sobs that shook her shoulders. "I didn't want you to find out this way." she choked. My stomach dropped. So it's true? She nodded, covering her face with her hands. I'm so sorry, Jake. I never meant for this to happen. His name was Daniel. He was a single dad. His daughter was in Emily's class. They'd started talking after school one day when he came to pick her up. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere, Emily said, but he understands me in a way I can't explain. I didn't plan this. I swear. I sat there in stunned silence. 7 years of marriage, undone in a single confession. The weeks that followed were a blur. Emily moved in with her sister to give me space. We tried therapy, but every session felt like picking at an open wound. It's been 4 months since I saw her last. The divorce papers are signed. The house is quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen, brewing her morning tea. And then I remember, I'm not angry anymore. Just tired. I hope she finds whatever it is she was looking for. And I hope one day I find peace too. Story 4. I haven't spoken to my father in 15 years, and he just showed up at my door. It was a Thursday evening when I heard the knock. Not the hurried, frantic kind of knock you get from a delivery driver trying to finish his shift. This one was slow, hesitant. 3 raps, pause, another 2. I peeked through the peephole and felt my stomach lurch. It was him. My father. 15 years. That's how long it had been since I last saw his face. Back then, I was 17, standing on the porch of our rundown Alabama home. My mom clutching my little brother in her arms while my dad screamed at us from the driveway. I'm not the bad guy here, he yelled, his face red and twisted. You're the ones turning my kids against me. Mom didn't reply. She just tightened her grip on Jason, her lips pressed into a thin line. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him all the ways he'd let us down, but I couldn't. So I stood there, frozen, as he slammed the car door and sped off. That was the last time I saw him. Until now. I opened the door, just a crack. Hi, Mark, he said softly. His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher around the edges. He looked older, too. His hair was mostly gray, his face lined with wrinkles I didn't recognize. What do you want? I asked flatly. I just wanted to see you, he said, to talk, if you'll let me. Every instinct told me to slam the door, but something in his eyes stopped me. They weren't the eyes of the man who used to stagger into our house at 2 a.m., reeking of whiskey and rage. They weren't the eyes of the man who punched holes in walls when the bills piled up, or who cursed Mom out for nagging him about getting a second job. These eyes looked tired, haunted even. 5 minutes, I said finally, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to. We sat across from each other at my kitchen table. Nice place, he said awkwardly, glancing around. You've done well for yourself. I didn't reply. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then he sighed. Look, Mark, I know I wasn't a good father. Hell, I was barely a father at all. I stared at him, my jaw tight. You weren't there, I said. For me, for Mom, for Jason. You just disappeared. I know, he said softly, and I regret it every single day. He told me about the years after he left, how he tried to get sober, relapsed, and tried again. How he'd spent time in and out of rehab, burning through what little money he had. How he finally got clean 5 years ago and started working construction to make ends meet. I thought about reaching out sooner, he said, but I figured, You didn't want to hear from me. He wasn't wrong. I don't know why you're here now, I said quietly. What do you expect me to say? That I forgive you? That we can just pick up where we left off? No, he said quickly. I don't expect anything. I wanted to see you, to tell you I'm sorry, even if you never want to see me again. I looked at him for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw him out, to tell him he didn't get to walk back into my life after all these years, dripping apologies like water on a cracked floor. But another part of me, a small, quiet part, remembered the man who used to toss a baseball with me in the yard. The man who, before the drinking and the anger, used to read me bedtime stories in a soft, rumbling voice. Jason's in Chicago now, I said finally. He's married. Got a baby on the way. My father's face crumpled. A grandchild, he whispered. I didn't even know. We sat there for what felt like hours. Him, crying quietly into his hands. Me, staring at the man who'd been both my hero and my deepest wound. When he finally stood to leave, he paused at the door. Thank you, he said, for letting me say my piece. I didn't respond. I couldn't. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt something shift in my chest. I wasn't ready to forgive him. But for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, someday, I could. Story 5. The stranger who sat next to me on the plane changed my life. I hate flying. The cramped seats, the recycled air, the way my stomach drops with every bit of turbulence. I avoid it whenever I can. But this time, I didn't have a choice. My younger sister was getting married in Vermont, and there was no way I could drive cross-country in 3 days. So I booked a last-minute flight, packed a carry-on, and tried to quiet the anxiety gnawing at my chest. As I boarded the plane, I told myself, just breathe, it's only 5 hours. You'll be fine. I found my seat 14B and stowed my bag in the overhead bin. The aisle seat was already occupied by an older woman with silver hair tucked neatly into a bun. She looked up as I squeezed past her. Hello there, she said warmly. I'm Margaret. Hi, I replied, offering a small smile. I'm Claire. I settled into my seat and pulled out my book, hoping to lose myself in its pages until we landed. But Margaret had other plans. Do you fly often, Claire? She asked. Not if I can help it, I admitted. I'm not a big fan. She chuckled. Ah, one of those. Don't worry, I've been flying for decades, and I'm still here to tell the tale. Her voice was soft and soothing, like a grandmother reading a bedtime story. For some reason, it made me feel a little less tense. As the plane taxied down the runway, Margaret struck up a conversation. She asked where I was headed, and I told her about my sister's wedding. Weddings, she mused, so full of hope and promise. Are you married yourself? I shook my head. Not yet. I was engaged once, but it didn't work out. She didn't press for details, just nodded knowingly. Sometimes the wrong doors have to close before the right ones can open. As the flight wore on, we kept talking. Margaret told me about her late husband, Henry. They'd met at a library in Boston in 1968. She was shelving books. He was looking for a copy of The Great Gatsby. I teased him for not knowing where Fitzgerald was shelved, she said with a twinkle in her eye. He came back the next day with flowers and a better grasp of the Dewey Decimal System. They'd been married for 42 years before he passed away. I still talk to him sometimes, she admitted softly, when the house feels too quiet. I told her about my own heartbreak, how I'd spent 3 years planning a life with someone who didn't see me as part of their future. How I still felt like I was trying to glue the pieces of myself back together. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached over and patted my hand. Sweetheart, don't ever let someone else's inability to love you diminish your own light. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the clouds drift by. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke, Margaret was reading a battered copy of Little Women. She smiled as she noticed me stir. Rest does wonders for a worried mind, she said. As we began our descent into Vermont, Margaret turned to me one last time. You're going to be just fine, Claire. I can tell. You've got a strong heart. Don't forget that. Before I could respond, the plane touched down with a gentle bump. At the gate, we said our goodbyes. Safe travels, she said, pulling her coat around her shoulders. You too, I replied. I never saw Margaret again. But I think about her often, the kindness of a stranger who didn't know me, but somehow saw right into the heart of me. And every time I fly now, I look for her silver bun in the crowd, just in case. Story 6. My manager said to stop helping everyone. So I did. I've always been the kind of person who likes to help. If a coworker is drowning in work, I lend a hand. If the copier is jammed, I'm the one crawling on the floor with a flashlight. If someone needs an extra 5 minutes to finish lunch, I cover their phone. It's not because I'm trying to win points. That's just who I am. But apparently, some people don't appreciate that. It all started when we got a new manager, Richard. Richard was different. He wore expensive suits that didn't quite fit right, spoke in corporate jargon no one understood, and had this habit of leaning back in his chair with his hands clasped behind his head like he was posing for a magazine cover. From day one, he seemed to have it out for me. Sam, he said during our first meeting, you're too nice. People take advantage of that. You need to focus on your work, not everyone else's. I nodded, trying to be diplomatic. But deep down, I thought he was wrong. Our office worked because we helped each other. That's how we'd always done things. A few weeks later, things came to a head. I was helping Jenna from accounting untangle a spreadsheet mess when Richard walked by. He stopped cold. What's going on here? He asked, his voice sharp. Just helping Jenna with the quarterly reports, I said. Did I not make myself clear? He snapped. You are not to help other departments. Focus on your own responsibilities. But, no buts, Sam. If you have extra time, that means you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Understood? Jenna gave me an apologetic look. Yes, Richard, I said quietly. So, I stopped helping. Completely. When the receptionist asked if I could cover her phone while she used the restroom. Sorry, I said. Richard told me to focus on my own work. When it needed someone to test the new time card system. No can do. Orders from management. When Jenna's spreadsheet crashed 5 minutes before a meeting. I wish I could, but I trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward Richard's office. At first, no one said anything, but soon, cracks started to show. The copier stayed jammed for 3 days because I wasn't there to fix it. The break room coffee maker overflowed every morning because no one else knew how to reset the filter. 2 clients were double booked because I didn't catch the scheduling error I usually would have. Then came the big one. Our department had a major report due Friday. Usually I stayed late to double-check the numbers, fix formatting errors, and ensure everything was perfect. This time, I clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp. The next morning, the report went out to corporate, riddled with mistakes. Richard's phone blew up within an hour. By noon, he stormed out of his office, face red. "Sam, my office. Now." I followed him in and closed the door. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Going on?" I echoed. "Don't play dumb. This report is a disaster. Why didn't you catch these errors?" I kept my voice calm. "You told me to focus on my own responsibilities. So I did. The report isn't my responsibility." His mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not what I meant. "I'm just following your instructions," I said evenly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he slumped into his chair. "All right," he muttered. "Maybe I was too harsh. It's okay to help sometimes. Just don't let it interfere with your work." I nodded. Understood. The next day, Jenna asked me to look at her spreadsheet again. "Sure thing," I said with a smile. And just like that, the office was running smoothly again. Funny how that works. Story 7. I raised my brother like my son. And now he wants nothing to do with me. When I was 22, my entire world turned upside down with one phone call. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was sitting in the break room at work, staring into a cold cup of coffee, trying to summon the energy to get through the rest of my shift. Then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Alex?" A woman's voice asked gently. "Yes." "There's been an accident. Your parents, they didn't make it." For a few seconds, the words didn't register. I thought maybe she had the wrong number. But then I heard my little brother's name. "Your brother Ethan is here at the hospital. He's asking for you." When I walked into that hospital room, my heart nearly broke in two. Ethan was sitting on the edge of a plastic chair, his small hands twisting the sleeves of his hoodie, his eyes red from crying. He was only 8 years old. When he saw me, he ran into my arms and sobbed. "Don't leave me too," he whispered. And in that moment, I made him a promise. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I've got you, Ethan. Always." I was 22 years old, fresh out of college, barely making enough at my customer service job to pay for my tiny apartment with 2 roommates. But none of that mattered. There was no way I was letting my brother go into foster care. So I moved us into a 1-bedroom rental. I gave up nights out with friends, turned down promotions that required overtime, and started building a life around Ethan. For 10 years, he was my whole world. I packed his school lunches, always cutting his sandwiches into triangles because he liked them that way. I helped him build volcanoes for science fairs, stayed up late teaching him multiplication tables, and sat in the bleachers at every single baseball game. I was the one clapping the loudest when he hit a double in the 6th inning. When he had nightmares, I'd sit on the edge of his bed until he fell asleep, softly rubbing his back and whispering, "You're safe. I'm here." When kids at school teased him about not having parents, I hugged him tight and promised, "You still have me." It wasn't easy. There were days I was so exhausted I thought I might fall apart. Times I wanted to go on dates or vacations, or even just spend a quiet Saturday morning in bed. But every decision I made for him. And I never regretted it. Not once. Ethan turned 18 last spring. He graduated high school with honors, got into a good college on the East Coast. I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. We spent the whole summer getting him ready. We picked out twin XL sheets, loaded up on ramen noodles, argued over whether he really needed 3 pairs of sneakers. On move-in day, I helped him carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs to his dorm. When I hugged him goodbye, he said, "I'll call you." Alex. Promise. I watched him disappear into the crowd of students, my chest tight. For the first time in a decade, I felt alone. At first, I gave him space. I figured he needed time to settle in, to make friends, to adjust. A week went by, then two. Finally, I sent him a text. Hey, how's college life treating you? No reply. Over the next few months, I reached out occasionally. A funny meme. A happy birthday text. An offer to send him some extra cash for groceries. Sometimes he replied with a quick thanks or a thumbs up emoji. Most of the time, there was nothing. 2 weeks ago, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a photo of him. He was on a beach in Cancun, grinning with his arm around a girl, a cocktail in his hand. His caption read, "Spring break vibes." My stomach twisted. I hadn't even known he was going. I hadn't even known he had a girlfriend. That night, I sent him another message. Hey, Ethan, can we talk soon? I miss you. No reply. Last night, I finally got him on the phone. Hey, he said, his voice flat. Hey, I echoed. How are you? Fine, busy. What's up? I wanted to check in. We haven't talked in a while. There was a long pause. Yeah, well, I've got a lot going on. I know, I said softly. I don't mean to bug you. I just miss you. We used to be so close. Alex, he sighed. I'm not a kid anymore. I need space, okay? You don't have to keep hovering over me. I'm not hovering, I whispered. I care about you. Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to live my life. I can't call you every week. I'm not asking for that, I said. Just don't forget I'm here. Another long pause. All right, I'll talk to you later. And then he hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. I know he's young. I know he's trying to figure out who he is. But it hurts. It hurts more than I can put into words. I gave him everything I had. And now he doesn't even look back. People keep telling me, this is normal. He'll come around. But what if he doesn't? What if I lost him the way I lost Mom and Dad? I don't know if I have it in me to survive that again. And maybe this is what love really is. Not the fireworks and the grand gestures, but quietly showing up day after day, even when no one notices. Even when the person you love most in the world walks away. Story 8. The dog that saved my life. I never planned on getting a dog. It wasn't that I didn't like them. I just didn't think I could handle the responsibility. But life has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need even when you don't realize you need it. It started on a gray December afternoon. I just finished another long shift at the diner where I worked the early mornings. As I walked home, I heard a soft whimper coming from behind a dumpster. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then I heard it again. A weak, pitiful sound, like someone crying quietly in the cold. I knelt down and peered behind the dumpster. There, huddled in the corner, was a small brown dog. She was shaking so hard, I could see her ribs moving. Her fur was matted with mud, and there was a raw scrape across her nose. Hey there, sweet girl, I murmured. It's okay. I won't hurt you. She flinched when I reached out my hand. But after a moment, she inched forward, sniffed my fingers, and then licked them. That was all it took. I wrapped her in my scarf and carried her the rest of the way home. I named her Willow. At first, she was skittish, hiding under my bed whenever I moved too quickly or raised my voice. She didn't know how to play with toys. She didn't even know how to accept affection. But every day, I sat on the floor with her, speaking softly, offering bits of food from my hand. Little by little, she came out of her shell. The first time her tail wagged just a small, hesitant flick, I felt tears sting my eyes. Over the next few months, Willow became my shadow. She followed me from room to room, her little paws clicking on the hardwood floors. She'd curl up at my feet while I drank my morning coffee. She'd nudge my hand when she wanted to scratch behind the ears. At night, she'd hop onto my bed and sigh contentedly as I pulled the blanket over us both. What I didn't realize at the time was how much I needed her too. I'd been drifting through life in a fog for years. Ever since my mom passed away, I'd been going through the motions. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. But Willow gave me a reason to get out of bed. She needed me. And slowly, I started to realize I needed her, too. One night, about a year after I found her, Willow saved my life. I'd been lying on the couch, watching TV, when I drifted off to sleep. I woke up to her barking loud, frantic, unlike anything I'd ever heard from her. At first, I thought she'd seen a raccoon outside, but then I smelled it. Smoke. I bolted upright and saw a thin gray haze creeping across the ceiling. The old wiring in the kitchen had sparked a fire while I slept. If Willow hadn't woken me up, I don't like to think about what would have happened. We got out safely. I held her tight on the curb as we watched the fire trucks arrive, her little heart pounding against my chest. "You're my hero," I whispered into her fur. She licked my cheek and let out a soft whine, as if to say, "You're mine too." It's been 5 years since that night. Willow is older now. There's gray around her muzzle, and she doesn't run as fast as she used to. But she's still my shadow. Still my little miracle. I didn't rescue her that day behind the dumpster. She rescued me. And every day since, she's been saving me in ways I can't even explain. Story 9. My neighbor tried to steal my backyard. So I let him build a fence. When I bought my little house on the edge of town, I thought I'd found peace. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a creaky porch swing, and a big backyard that sloped gently into a line of trees. I planted flowers in the spring, put in a small vegetable garden, and spent quiet evenings sipping tea as the sun went down. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Then Todd moved in next door. At first, he seemed friendly enough. A big guy in his early 40s with a booming laugh in a pickup truck parked in the drive. But it didn't take long for cracks to show. He played loud music late into the night, left trash bags piled up by the curb for days. And worst of all, he had a habit of letting his 2 massive dogs roam free, tearing up my flower beds and leaving presents all over my lawn. I tried to be patient. Tried to talk to him calmly. "Hey Todd," I said one afternoon, "would you mind keeping the dogs on your side? They've been digging up my tomatoes." He grinned like I'd just told him a joke. "They're just being dogs. Lighten up." Then came the fence. One morning, I woke to the sound of hammering. I peered out the window and saw Todd in a tank top and cargo shorts, pounding stakes into the ground. He was building a fence on my property. I walked out to the yard and waved. "Hey, Todd, what's going on?" He wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Putting up a fence. The property line's a little off, so I'm fixing it." I frowned. "The line runs with that old oak tree," I said, pointing. "You're about 10 feet over." Todd smirked. "Nah, you're mistaken. I checked the plat map." I knew he hadn't. That tree had marked the boundary since the house was built. But Todd didn't care about maps. He cared about taking a chunk of my backyard for himself. I could have yelled. Could have threatened to call the cops. But I didn't. Instead, I forced a smile. You know what? You're right. That space isn't doing me much good. Anyway, build your fence. His eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. You serious? Sure, go for it. Over the next week, Todd worked like a man possessed. He tore up my grass, pounded posts deep into the soil, and strung up panels taller than me. When he was done, he stood in the middle of his expanded yard, hands on his hips, surveying his new kingdom. You're gonna love this, he said. I'll keep the dogs on my side now. I nodded politely. Sounds great. What Todd didn't know was that while he'd been hammering and sawing, I'd been making a few calls. To the county assessor, the zoning board, a land surveyor, and my lawyer. 2 weeks later, a man in a reflective vest showed up with a tripod and measuring tape. He spent an afternoon marking the true property line. Turns out, I'd been right. That old oak tree, it wasn't just on my side. It was 10 feet inside my property, which meant Todd's shiny new fence and a big chunk of his lawn was mine. I knocked on his door the next day. Hey, Todd, I said, holding a manila envelope. Got some news for you. He looked annoyed. What now? I handed him the survey report. This shows the actual property line. You've built your fence on my land. He flipped through the pages, his face turning red. This is bull. It's the law, I said gently. You've got 30 days to remove the fence and restore my yard. Or I can take legal action. Todd ranted and raved, threatened to sue me, told anyone who would listen that I was trying to steal his land. But the survey didn't lie. Neither did the letter from my attorney. 30 days later, the fence was gone. And Todd, he keeps his dogs on a leash now. He mows his own lawn. And when we pass each other in the driveway, he doesn't smile anymore. Which, honestly, is fine by me. I sit on my porch swing in the evenings, sipping my tea as the sun dips below the trees. My yard is quiet, peaceful, and it's all mine. Story 10. The stranger who left me a note changed my whole perspective. It was one of those days where everything feels heavy. The kind of day where even getting out of bed feels like a battle. I'd been running on fumes for weeks, juggling work deadlines, bills, and the quiet ache of loneliness I couldn't seem to shake. On this particular morning, I was running late. As I pulled into the grocery store parking lot, my mind was elsewhere. I wasn't paying attention when I parked crookedly across 2 spaces. It wasn't intentional, just distracted. Inside, I moved through the aisles like a ghost, tossing bread and milk into my cart without really seeing them. The cashier gave me a polite smile I didn't have the energy to return. When I stepped back out into the cold, afternoon air, I saw the piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. My stomach dropped. Great, I thought. Someone's probably written a nasty note about my parking. It would have been deserved. I sighed, bracing myself as I unfolded the paper. But it wasn't what I expected. In neat handwriting, it said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I hope you're okay, whatever it is. You'll get through it. Be gentle with yourself today." At the bottom was a little drawing of a sun peeking out from behind a cloud. No signature. No way of knowing who wrote it. Just those words. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the note. Something in my chest shifted. The tight, tangled knot of stress and sadness loosened just a little. That night, I stuck the note on my fridge with a magnet. Every morning after that, I'd read it while pouring my coffee. Be gentle with yourself today. It became a mantra. A few weeks later, I found myself at that same grocery store again. As I loaded bags into my trunk, I noticed a young woman in the car next to mine. She sat hunched over her steering wheel, shoulders shaking. She was crying. I hesitated. Then I grabbed a scrap of paper from my glove box and wrote, "Hey, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I hope you're okay. Whatever it is, you'll get through it. Be gentle with yourself today." I drew a little sun peeking out from behind a cloud, and I tucked it under her windshield wiper. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror. She was holding the note in her hands, staring at it. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. It's funny how a few kind words from a stranger can ripple outwards, how they can light a spark in someone's darkness, how they can remind you that even on the heaviest days, you're not as alone as you feel. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we're all just passing little pieces of light back and forth, keeping each other warm until the sun comes out again. If you're still awake, thank you for spending your time with us. We'd love to have you back tomorrow night, so go ahead and subscribe. Tap like if this video helped you unwind. And let us know in the comments what kind of stories help you fall asleep. Sleep well. See you in the next one. And let us know in the comments